Baby and Me class, and then we'll head over here after. But we are very lucky to have George Abraham with us today. So George Abraham, along with his wife Susan, they started CLIC, Couples Living in Christ. And they're really a great example to a lot of us. I know many of us know them personally, but for those of you who don't, you'll get to see just right now how wonderful they are. And he's speaking today on raising life-ready kids, which is pertinent to all of us. So here you go.
All right. Thank you, guys. I'm glad I'm here. Please pray for me that it goes well. I have a lot of things on my mind, a lot of things that I've been thinking about since before we had kids, and during now. We've had kids for a while. And we have 3 children. We've got Adrian, who's 11, Gabriel, who's going to be 9 soon, and Alara, who's 4, so 3 kids. And I feel like it's helped having kids, because before having kids, I felt like I had all the answers to how to be a parent, because I had been listening to things like Focus on the Family for years. I'm like, oh, okay, I've got all the pointers. I know exactly what to do. And while having kids, it's easier if looking from the outside, right? Like if we're in the eye of the storm, all of us, and all of us are just trying to get through each day alive, right? And not to kill them and not them to kill us. So it's a lot harder to raise kids than it looks. So the advice that I'm going to give, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, right? So even what I say, I know you're going to want to, some of you guys might not like what I'm saying, but just take it for what it is. See what part of it you can use. And if you don't feel like it applies, it's okay. You don't have to get triggered and get crazy on me, right? So just take it easy. It's what's worked for us a little bit, and what I saw worked on me. Now I look back and say, oh, my dad did this to me, and now I kind of appreciate it years later. So some of what we got is from a book called Gist that Susan and I read, which is trying to give you the gist of how to be a parent and how to get your kids ready for life. No need to get upset. There's more than one way to raise a child, right? So even if I'm saying this, just know that each child is different. Each child might have a different way that works on them. And we're all trying to just lead to some meaningful solutions. And then the other thing is some children, so we're going to be talking a little bit about discipline and about how we can have self-discipline and maybe how to discipline our children. And just know that some kids are different. Some kids, very little discipline goes a long way. Some of them you look at them a certain way and they cry, right? Everybody's different. Everybody receives it differently. So just use it with a grain of salt, like what you can use for your child. And just to know that God, if we're children of God, God has been tough on us too, right? Like he sends his people into exile, like he sends the Israelites into exile when they don't listen to him. Then he finally brings them back. Then they don't listen to him again. He lets somebody else take them into slavery. He uses the world to teach them lessons, life lessons. And that's the problem, is when we don't teach our kids very well or just don't discipline them very well, the world will discipline them for us. And the world's discipline is much harsher than our version of discipline. So could the solution be the following? We need to make our kids' lives easier. We need to make our kids' lives smoother. Do we need to make them more joyful? So much more free of stress, full of love, successful, meaningful, enjoyable, exciting, deep and spiritual. So all of those things are like the fun parts of parenting. And it's what we all wish we could do. But we don't want to do the hard parts, or the parts that are not as enjoyable, or the parts that our kids might resent us for in the moment. We only want to do these parts, right? We all want to make our kids' life easier. We all want to see them happy. We all want to see them playing. None of us want to do get in the ditch, get dirty, and really discipline them to the point where they're like, I hate you, Mom. I hate you, Dad, right? It's all coming, whether you like it or not. So are we willing to get in that ditch and get down there in the trenches and do some hard parenting? Or do we just want this part, the easy part? Because the problem is, if you choose just the easy part, I know a lot of parents that just like to spoil their kids or just give them everything they want, or they just don't want to hear them cry, so just give them what they want. I don't want to hear it. I've had a tough day. I don't want to come home to some more whining and crying. They want ice cream, give them the ice cream. They want to stay up late, give them that. They want to stay on their iPad for hours, whatever. like just leave me alone for a while. I just had a hard day at work. So we have to sort of get our kids ready for the GEs of life, right? So what are the GEs? I think a lot of us, especially as Egyptians, we're really good at raising smart kids. I'm very proud to say, like, most of the Egyptians I know have very bright, smart kids. Maybe our genetics are good, we built the pyramids, we're pretty successful. But we're very bad sometimes about wanting to do the tough parts. So, but what are the GEs of life? Like, it would be, I wish we had pencil and paper. You guys can write down what you think. If you could list 10 things out of what you think your child should experience before they turn 18 or 21. Can you guys pull out your cell phones? Can I make you guys do some homework for a sec? Because then we'll compare notes. So take a sec. We'll give you 3 minutes. Try to type 10 things you want your child to experiences, before they reach adulthood, whenever you guys consider adulthood, 18 or 21. So have you guys finished what 10 life experiences you hope your kids experience before adulthood? All right. Well, while you guys are thinking about it, I'll tell you my background. So my dad, growing up, was a really tough dad. He was a military guy. He had spent I think 6 or 7 years in the Egyptian military in the desert while there was a war between them and Israel. So he came out as a super tough, I think he was a sergeant or something. He was a very tough guy. And he treated us, his kids and even his wife, as if they were subordinates in the military. He would say something and he'd want it done right away. You couldn't even wait a second. He would get angry at me if I took a second to do something. If he says it, I should drop what I'm doing instantly and run and go do it. And I always thought my dad was psycho. He's so tough, he's so mean. And then he also, from the time I was Gabriel's age, about 8, 9 years old, he had a gardening and landscaping company. Every summer, every winter, any time off, I'd have to go to work with his guys. And all my cousins didn't have to do that. A lot of people didn't have to do that I knew. It's why is my dad so tough on me? He's always pushing me so hard. And at the time, I didn't understand why. It took me until a few years ago to really get it, to when I had kids. And I realized, looking back, that, I started life really early to be pushed hard, whether it's to work or to save up for what I want, or I had to go work at McDonald's when I was 16, or I had to pay for my own bills. Whatever it was, I felt yes, I started earlier and I had less of what in America we would call a childhood. But now I also realize that a lot of other people who spoil their kids, the childhood lasts into their early 30s. Some people don't grow up until really late because of this. And then they get a late start on life. So then I look back, and I think, you know what? Maybe my dad had something to that, because he made me ready for life. Life didn't seem so daunting when work was already part of my vocabulary, when being pushed hard was already part of my vocabulary. So here, we'll start going through these GEs of life. Not being invited to a birthday party or a social event. So imagine disappointment has to be part of the GEs of your kid's life. The death of a pet, right? Nobody wants that to happen, but it's things that they should experience before they become adults. Breaking something valuable and them having to pay for it. So I remember breaking somebody's window to their house because I was shy, and guess what? My dad made me have to save up for it and pay for that. So taking responsibility for our mistakes. Working hard on a paper and getting a poor grade regardless. So I'm sure a lot of us have had those classes where no matter how hard we thought we were working at it, we still didn't do well in the class or didn't do well on that paper. How about if your car breaks down far from home and have to change your own tire, right? Like, I think that's a good thing to learn. Like, hey, my 16-year-old boy gets his first car, it's a hoopty because I don't want to get him something nice, right? And he has to fix his own tire on the side of the road or whatever is happening to him. It's just making them realize like oh, okay, like being part of life is self-resilient. Having a best friend move away or stop wanting to talk to them or hang out with them, that's also like kind of tough on people. There's some friendships that I still mourn for. I'm like, oh, this is my best friend, and we just stopped talking. But that's a good thing to experience. Another disappointment is like being told like a ballet class or a basketball camp is full and they don't have any more spots. Failing a test or a subject, even though you tried your best. Missing a movie at the theater because you have to fulfill responsibilities like helping Teta with something. Getting pulled over by the police and getting a ticket. Getting sent to the principal's office where you get suspended for some dumb thing you did. Some event is canceled because someone else misbehaved, meaning you're paying for mistakes that you didn't even make. Getting fired from a job when you've done your best. Not making your favorite sports team or getting into an AP class or whatever thing that you had wanted. So a lot of these things, being bullied or made fun of at school, regretting a decision that you can't revert or take back, having a crush on someone and having that person not return those feelings towards you. I think where I'm trying to get to is a lot of us try to shield our children from feeling those feelings. We almost want to put them in a bubble and we're like, no, I don't want them to ever feel pain. I don't want them to ever feel hurt. I don't want them to ever feel like regret. And so by shielding them from all these emotions and shielding them from life experiences because of that, a lot of times they're naive. They're not ready for life, having been shielded from everything that life has to offer. And life is full of good and bad. Life is not all good. And so when they had a childhood that was only good and only magical, and then now you're not their parent anymore, they grow up and they move out, and they realize, oh wow, life really has a lot of ups and downs, and sometimes it sucks, and sometimes it's amazing. Imagine like the letdown, right? When you look at it and you're like, oh, my best years were behind me. My best years were from 0 to 21 when my parents made sure I never felt any negative emotions. Then they're gonna look at adulthood as a horrible experience, instead of adulthood just being like, oh, it's just par for the course. It's normal. It's a normal part of life. So I think a lot of parents, by shielding their kids so much, their kids aren't ready for life. They're just sort of, I don't know what to call it, but it's almost like that's the people who get triggered by everything, right? Because why? Everything is an emotional breakdown for them because they've never experienced really a range of emotions. So disappointment, failure, unfairness, sacrifice, all of these is what will help them. And sometimes the best teachers in life are these items. And then the last one on there is, I don't know if you can see it, it says coaches, teachers, mentors, bosses. You have to accept other people being tough on your kids too. Like I've seen a lot of people where if the teacher's tough on the kid, the parent comes to the class and yells at the teacher, or if a coach is really tough on the kid, that the parent comes and yells at the coach, right? Or if you don't let your kids experience other adults, meaning, like let's say, I know that John is really great. I would love for Adrian and Gabriel to spend the day with John and for him to mentor them. And even if they act up with him, it's okay for him to discipline them if he has to, right? I think we've gotten to the point where we're so unwilling to let the village help raise the child. It used to be, it took a village to raise a child, right? Now, it's like, no, nobody can yell at my kid. Nobody can be tough with my kid. Nobody better put down my kid. And although it's good to have those like mama bear, papa bear type of instincts, it's actually making them not ready for life at all. Because I know some people, like, they get a job, they're professionals. They get a job and their boss yells at them and they quit. And you're like, you can't do this. You're a nurse or you're a pharmacist or you're a whatever. You can't quit just because your boss was mean to you. There's a lot of mean bosses. And they're like, no, like I've never had anybody talk to me that way. Just like, at least you could have waited it out till you found another job, till you figured something out. Like, you just quit today? Like, yeah, I just didn't like how they talked to me. Like, oh wow, this is gonna be a hard life for this person, because there's a lot of those people out there, but they're not ready for it. They've never ever had anybody be tough on them. And then there's natural outcomes, is the next one. So this is the worst. This is the best and worst. Best because sometimes you just have to let natural outcomes happen. The worst because sometimes the most natural outcomes, if you haven't prepared them, could be life-threatening. It could be detrimental to life. So for example, I heard one time, like let's say you have a little kid, little 3-year-old that wants to jump off like the dresser. And if they jump off the dresser, they're probably gonna twist their ankle or break something or get bruised up. And you say, hey, I don't think you should jump off of that, in a very calm voice. And then you see that a little bit later, they get up on top of the dresser, they look like they want to take that jump again, and you say, hey, you're gonna get hurt if you jump off that dresser. And then you might be the next day, you see them get back up on that thing, and then you just let them jump. And they will get hurt, and they will get bruised up or twist their ankle or do whatever. But that is a much lesser consequence than they've now grown up, they've never had to suffer any consequence, and now, they don't think they need to pay their credit card bills, so they ruin their credit, or they lose their temper and they hit somebody and they go to jail for a night, because they lost their temper and they've never had to suffer any consequences previously. Who knows? Like the consequences later in life that will be doled out by the system it doesn't depend on the situation. They're not going to be like, well, he didn't mean it and he's a good person. And no, he did this one thing. That's it. He gets the punishment. So if we don't let our kids experience natural outcomes from when they're younger, then they're not going to know like how detrimental they can be when they're older. So these are like the 3 versions of ourselves that we need to evolve. So when they're first born, we need to be like the leader or the boss of the child. From 0 to, here we're going to put it here, from 0 to 10, you need to be the leader or the boss of your infant or child. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you say something, you should stick to your guns. You don't change your words. Even if you regret saying that there's a certain punishment and now you got to carry out that punishment, now you have to do it. It just means like this is the time for you to be the tough guy. And I know it's hard because those are also the years that they're the cutest and you just want to be nice with them. So you have to know how to do it in the right portions, right? So there's a time to be tough. There's a time to be loving. There's a time to discipline. There's a time to have fun. But I think some parents just take it too far and it's like all of one thing. Then this middle stage is called the coach. And your young child from about 11 to 15, you'll be like their life coach, watching from the sidelines. So you're no longer going to be telling them every little thing and micromanaging them. Hopefully you've done a good job from 0 to 10 doing that. Now it's your time to kind of like pull back a little bit and see what happens. Let them make some mistakes, because at least during these years, there's no mistakes that you can't walk away from, right? So okay, make the mistakes, try your thing, and I'm going to just watch and not micromanage you as much. And you need to do that now, because some parents wait till they go off to college to do that, but then they've never had that. There's a lot of people who flunk out of their first year of college because they've never had any independence before. And then they don't study, they don't go to class, they don't do whatever, because that's their first time they've ever tasted freedom. So you need to let them taste some freedom while being under your control, so you can be a coach from the sidelines, watch how this plays out, and hopefully coach them along, or let them fail and then teach them, use that as teaching moments. And then, I know this is a hard one, but from 16 years old, you are no longer their boss, you are no longer their coach, you're their friend. So, as a friend, you can give advice, right? That's what you would do with your friends. As a friend, you can be a mentor, sort of, but you're no longer controlling them. And you have to let this happen. Again, if they make mistakes, it's better that they make those mistakes at 16, 17, 18 than if they make those mistakes later. So for example, one older woman, like a senior citizen woman, called in at the radio station, and I heard it happening on Focus, and she was calling in to get advice. And she's like, hey, my daughter has been running up her credit card bill, and she can't pay it off, and this has happened multiple times, and then I have to pay off her credit cards for her. And the person was like, wait, but how old are you? And I think she was like in her 60s. I said, well, how old is your daughter? She was like, 40 years old. He's like, she's 40 and you're still paying off her credit card bills when she racks up bills that she can't pay off? She's like, yeah, but I don't want her to get in trouble, and I don't want her to not have her credit cards or to lose her credit or whatever it was. So she's protecting her. What the guy in the radio said was like, she probably had her first credit card at 18, 19, 20. You know, right when you go to college, they're like handing out credit cards right away. They might have low limits, but they're already trying to get you hooked. So he said, you should have let her not pay her credit cards off for her, let her fail, let her ruin her credit at 18, so that 7 years later when they give her her credit back at 25, she would have thoroughly learned her lesson. And then she would have been a grown-up at 25. Instead, she's 40 years old and still acting like an 18-year-old and still hasn't learned a thing. I don't hope any of this for any of our kids, but it just shows like the extreme version of caring with no discipline versus it might have even been better that she was extremely disciplinary and less love, because this mom was just trying to shower her kid with love, but no wisdom within that love. So parents' first challenge is you must parent as a unit, right? Like it can't be that daddy's the good guy, he's spoiling them, mommy's the bad guy, she's the one who has to like raise them. No, you gotta be on the same page. You guys have to be bad cop and worst cop. There's no good cop and bad cop, right? So your kids can't play you off of each other. They're very good and very devious about knowing who's the weaker link and who's the weaker link from which subject. It might be that daddy's weaker at giving out ice cream and mommy's weaker at bedtime stuff. So be careful. Make sure you guys are together hand in hand raising them with the same plan, that you guys have the same plan together. So must be on the same page. This part is my own feeling. I know the ladies won't like this, but I think mothers have a tendency to tell fathers how to father. And it's because a lot of guys tend to be a little tougher. And this isn't always the case. I've seen a lot of guys that are the ones who are, the ones who spoil and the ones who don't want to discipline. But there are some cases where when the dad wants to do something, I feel like the wife holds him back or doesn't want him to do those things. So just make sure that you guys are a team, right? And that you're working together that way. And God made the husband and wife different for a purpose, right? So sometimes I know that my approach to parenting is different than Susan's approach, but at least our goals are the same. And we talked about this earlier. Don't look for the easy way to be a parent, right? Because if you choose the easy way now, like the people who choose the easy way when the kid is 0 to 5, 6, and just hand them lollipops and iPads and ice cream and let them sleep whenever they feel like, it doesn't look that different. A 5-year-old who has a parent that does that and a 5-year-old who has a parent that's very on point on what they should be doing, you don't see the difference as much. But if you fast forward, a 15-year-old who hasn't been told what to do their whole life versus a 15-year-old who has good parenting and good structure, then you'll start seeing differences. Fast forward again till where they're both 30, one's like the CEO of their company and one is working at McDonald's still because they have no structure in their life. So it's easy for a time or for a season. It won't be easy forever if you take the easy way when they're young. So we talked about this earlier, my life is already hard, I don't want to deal with harshness. No, you're a parent, you need to man up or whatever and get ready for the tough times. And if you do, it will be easier later. So for example, when we were trying to teach Adrian how to be sleep trained, we went to all the older couples like John and some of the other ones, and I was like, how do you sleep train your kids? And we got a bunch of different advice, but I took the advice that we liked. I think it was John who gave me that advice. And I was tough about it. So when Adrian was 6 months old, it was like, no, you will go in your crib at 6 months old. I'm going to shut the light off. I'm going to close the door, and I'm not coming back in. I don't care. Cry bloody murder for all I care. And it was tough as a parent. It wasn't easy to sit there and listen to him cry for an hour that first night. But then the next day was 45 minutes, the next day was 30 minutes, the next day was 20 minutes, the next day was 10 minutes. By the end of the week, that's it. He was ready to sleep through the night. Ready to sleep on his own. And then I think we did the next version at 9 months where we didn't go to him in the middle of the night either. So it's tough as a parent to go through those harsh parts, but you reap the benefits after it's done. They reap the benefits that now they have a great sleeping schedule where they're rested, right? So taking the easy way where it's like, no, I don't want to hear them cry. I don't want to, make them struggle. Then everybody struggles. You struggle and they struggle eventually. And just be ready that your children will not always sing your praises, right? Whether it's at the younger ages or maybe it's in their teens, just get ready for that. That's normal. For when your kids tell you, I hate you, I don't want you as my parent, I wish you'd die, I don't know, whatever the kids say when they're really, really upset with you. But that's normal because in order to raise a good kid, sometimes you have to be the punching bag. And that's normal. It's okay, right? I had those feelings when I was in my teens, and now my father's my best friend. Even though when he was younger, I thought of him as like my military drill sergeant. But it's okay. Now we're best friends. We talk all the time. We hang out all the time. So it's all right to go through that season. So this one is kind of morbid, but I have to be ready for the day that I'm no longer here. What if I die young? There's a lot of people who pass young from God knows what. Is my kid going to be ready for that day? Or am I just making them codependent on me that if I pass away, that's it? Like they'll drown in life. So I'm always trying to think of this, like, am I doing what I can do to raise them in a way that they don't need me one day? That's part of what I should be raising them towards, is that they won't need me. I shouldn't be raising them so that they're codependent on me. The better way of teaching them is what? You give them wings so that they can fly. I'm not trying to clip their wings or not trying to make them dependent on me. I'm trying to raise kids that are ready for life, even a life without me. Whether it's because I pass away or because they move away, I don't want to raise kids that will crumble under the weight of the world. So sometimes we just want to shower our kids with love, but from when they're a newborn, after about a couple months, the doctor told us, I remember, like, oh, at about 6 months old, kids know how to manipulate. I was like, wait, what now? So we have to be ready that from even a young age, kids do manipulate their kids. Kids do manipulate their parents. And they're very good at it too. They're like pros because they know you just as well as you know them. So just be careful that they don't use that manipulation against you. All right, let me just fast forward here. All right, so last point, we'll jump to that one. It's like we shouldn't always be so gung-ho to save the day when our kids are going through something. So part of it is disciplinary action, and part of it is letting them suffer life's consequences. So someone gave an example of there's a kid who would always forget their lunch at home. They wouldn't take their lunch on the way to school, or wouldn't take their jacket, and they might be cold. And you just don't say anything. They're not going to die if they miss lunch. They're not going to die if they're cold that day. But guess what? They won't forget again. If they were really cold that day, they'll never forget again. So you don't have to be the person that's sitting there nagging them. Let life teach them. It's okay. Especially if it won't kill them, all the better, right? Like let them learn without you having to be the person that's always barking and nagging, because it just makes you the annoying parent. Just let them deal with it. Like Gabriel always forgets to take his water bottle. I don't know what happens. Maybe he drinks out of the water fountain. I don't know. But we just let him do it. It's his thing. My wife said, I'm not nagging you anymore. She's not nagging him anymore. But that's good. It's good to go through natural life consequences and not always save the day and like, oh, I'm going to drive to school. He forgot his lunch and give it to him. It's like, this is like the 7th time this happened this month. You know what? He can go hungry. Like this, he needs to start learning to not forget. So I think we touched on this. Some parents have a hard time saying no. I think we have to get over that. It's okay to say no. You can say no to your kids and they'll still love you. This is like a magic trick that nobody knows. You don't have to say yes to everything. If you say no, they will still love you. They have to, right? They need you to live. So don't worry. I think some of us are just so terrified to say no to our kids because it's like, no, but I want them to love me. I want them to like me. And those parents are going to be hit because you don't love your parent because they give you everything. You love them because they spend time with you, they play with you, they have experiences with you. It's not because spoiling them doesn't make them love you. It's the time that you spend with them and the quality of that time. So I think sometimes we get it wrong, like, oh, if I spoil them, they'll love me more. Sometimes I see that with the grandparents. They want to give my kids everything, both sides of the grandparents, and I don't see that it increases the love very much. But I see with my brother or with my cousin who actually gets down and plays with the kids, right? They don't give them that much toys, but they are so in love with those people because they spend quality time with them. So I think we just have to change our minds that saying yes to everything and spoiling them does not mean that they'll love us anymore. You don't have to be your child's best friend. It's actually better, I don't know, psychologists can chime in, but I think there was a time when the psychologist said, hey, don't discipline your kids too much, you should be their friends. And that was like in the 80s and 90s, and they ruined a bunch of us. And then they came back and said, oops, sorry, I think you should be more of the disciplinary and more of the person that sets the bar instead of worrying so much about being their friend. And there's nothing wrong with discipline. So sometimes discipline comes in the form of like timeouts, sometimes it comes in the form of like certain punishments or taking away certain things, or corporal punishment even, but just don't do it out of anger. You always do it like loving them. And it's hard. Sometimes when my kids do something wrong for the 20th time, I am angry by that time. So, I do catch myself being angry while disciplining. So, we talked about this before. You must discipline your child or the world will do it for you. So please don't wait until somebody has to discipline them. A boss has to fire them. That we talked about losing your credit score, going to jail, getting divorced, whatever. Like someone else has to discipline them. They go through real harsh consequences. So here's a timeline I made up with using Adrian's birth dates. So here, from 0 to 6. So having a good disciplinary action with your kids or raising them right starts from the beginning. It doesn't start when they're 18. So from 6 to 9 months old, you sleep train them, which is a hard event. At 3 years old, they need to learn that having meltdowns and tantrums don't produce the thing they want, like the ice cream they want or whatever it is that they'd like. At around 7 years old, they should learn how to do chores and to help around the house. And by doing chores, they earn money, which they buy themselves toys. So you no longer buy them stuff. They've got to learn what the world is like. And in the world, if I don't work, I don't get what I want, right? So it's better that you teach them that. At 10 years old, for example, they learn that, we talked about this, if they make a mistake, they suffer the consequences, like forgetting their lunch at home. At around 16 years old, they get their first part-time job so that they can have the money for a car, or at least for paying for the stuff of the car. Of course, this might not apply to all kids. If your kid happens to be set to go to Harvard and they really do study 12 hours a day, okay. I wouldn't force them to get a part-time job, but when I was younger, I knew that I used to procrastinate a lot, and sometimes having a job helped me to focus, because then I'd go work for a few hours, and then I'd have a few hours left, and I'd use those few hours left to really study, versus I would just play all day and play video games and play basketball outside and then do the same thing. I just have a few hours left anyways. So it just gave me a way to hone in on the time. Here, he turns 18 years old. You resist the urge to get them out of trouble, like credit card debt or speeding tickets, like we said. Now your child, I think this should be what was this? This is 21 years old, is ready for their first real job and starting grad school. And your parenting job should be done. You should have done all the hard work before then. The problem is when you've spoiled your kids up till 21, now your job has just begun because they're not ready for life. So now you're still holding their hand and trying to help them. So these last couple bullet points are where if you've done a good job at disciplining and a good job at setting boundaries. Now, if you notice, all these ones start to become easier and nicer. So here, your job is done. They're off on their own at 21. At 25, they tell you they're too busy because they're living their best life. That's great. They're not bothering you, trying to tell you like, hey, get me out of this car payment that I can't afford, or I can't pay my rent or my mortgage. At 30 years old, now they realize they need your guidance, right? Every person goes full circle, and when they don't want to talk to their parent, to where they realize they need their parents again. And they want your mentorship, and they want you help to buy their first house, getting them ready for their wedding. They want to start their own company now. At this point, it's okay to relax and to help them and to even spoil them. Why? Because up from 0 to 30, you weren't spoiling. Now you can spoil because you won't ruin them, right? Like now you can help them put a down payment on a house, or to help them with their wedding, or to help them start their own company. Maybe they need a push for that. But if you've been a good parent up to that, you're not spoiling them now. Now you're just being a good parent. It's not like I want to hoard everything that I have and all my money and everything and never help them. I just don't want to give it to them at the wrong time. The wrong time is from like 0 to 18, but the right time might be from 30 plus, right? Where they could use some help. And if I am financially able to, I do want to, right? So I think it's a when, not that I don't believe in giving kids stuff. It just, there's the right and wrong times for it. And then now your child is 35 years old, expecting their third child, right? Like they've already got married and have been having kids. And meanwhile, you're having fun spoiling the first 2 grandkids because you know your children will do the important job of making them life ready, and this cycle repeats itself. So now you can spoil your grandkids because your kids already are doing the hard work of doing what you did, which is making their kids life ready. What is it? Isn't there a saying like that? Like if you spoil your kids, you'll raise your grandkids. But if you, I don't know if it's the opposite. If you discipline your kids, you get to spoil your grandkids. So the idea is if we do the hard part first, notice how everything from like 21 on was a lot more smooth, a lot more fun. Seeing them grow, even if they're growing on their own without you, you're just happy for them, right? Versus some of us that like want to clip their wings and keep them close to us. We're doing them a disservice, we're being done a disservice, and we're all drowning together, right? So the life preserver that I want them to have is just that they're ready for life. That's the best life preserver you can give them. By giving them everything they want, you're doing the opposite of that. You're enabling them to be codependent on you, and they're not ready for life. So all of our kids are great kids. All of these things that we were talking about is just how to maximize what we have, right? I know that you guys are doing a great job with your children. All of you guys love your children to death. I don't question that part. So maybe some of us less than others. But the idea is, I know you guys love your kids, and I know your kids love you, and I know they're good kids probably. But this is just how to get the most out of it. How to, get that little bit more out of them, and a little bit more out of you. Trust me, all kids have the potential to be criminals, and they all have the potential to be doctors and lawyers. It's just, what are you doing? Because you're part of the equation, right? And if you enable them, sometimes that brings the worst out of them, not the best. And I think sometimes people look at me and think that I'm too tough on my kids, and I am. Sometimes I am tough. I think Gabriel earlier wanted to probably tell you guys how I discipline him very much. But I'm doing my best. I might not even be doing the right thing. I'm pretty sure I get it wrong a bunch of times. But I know that spoiling them along the way is going to get it very wrong. So this way I might once in a while make a mistake, but the other way is definitely a mistake. So that's it. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? I'm sure a lot. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Rami, go ahead, Rami. Yeah. Well, let's take it one at a time. So the one where walking to school, so I'll give you just my own life experience, and then we'll let Adrian say something, but I'll tell you my own life experience. My dad, again, my dad who was tough on me, I think it was from 5 or 6 years old in the valley. I was walking just down the street. The preschool or whatever it was, the first grade was just down the street. But he had me crossing one of those little streets by myself when I was that young. Looking back at it, I think it is a little bit crazy, but he was fostering the independence very young. So, and then by the time I was 7 or 8, I was like walking half a mile. And by the time I was in junior high, I was walking or taking my bike like 1.5 miles, 2 miles. And by the time I was in high school, he made me get like the Metro bus pass. And I had to take like 2 buses and walk a bunch. And he was so tough on me because he didn't have to do that to me. He could totally have driven me to school. I don't know. He was a lot different on my little brother. I think he got softer as he got older or something. But with me, he was dead set on being tough. And he always told my mom, I could hear him in Arabic, if you guys know Arabic. He's like, oh, Aizat Allah ragil. I want to make a man out of him. And I remember thinking as a little kid, I was like, just leave me alone. Like, why? I don't want to become a man. This man thing sounds really bad, right? But now, looking back, I admire my dad because I remember my mom fighting with him about it, because my mom was the kind that's like, no, my little baby, I don't want him to suffer. And he would always say, please let me raise my son. Please let me make a man out of him. Again, I didn't want to be made a man at that time. I would tell you, taking my bike when it rains, like from my home, my high school was like 5 miles away or something from where I lived. I remember in the rain, I'm just pedaling and getting soaked, right? And he didn't offer me like, hey, I'll take you to school. So part of it makes me feel like, wow, he's a little heartless. But now as an adult, there's nothing that terrifies me. There's nothing that bothers me. There's no hardship that I get really worked up about. Why? Because my dad made me ready about my life. I might not have liked it in the moment at all, and it might have been even dangerous at some times, right? You're taking your bike for 5 miles, somebody could hit you on the way, right? But he had to, just like, imagine if Saint Mary did not allow Jesus to go up on the cross because she's like, no, that's my little baby, I don't want him to suffer, right? She would be holding him back from his full potential. So sometimes we hold our kids back from their full potential, and they're able to do a lot more than we give them credit, right? They could be much more mature than we give them credit for. There's a reason why my grandfather was like 15, 16 when he got married, and my grandma was like 14, 15. Like they were like so young, and people were getting married 100 years ago like that because they were much more mature, because they had like helped them to become that mature that young, versus keep stretching out the time that we declare is their childhood, right? Like now their childhood is into their 20s. Their whole 20s is now considered part of their childhood, instead of before, people in their 20s were getting married, having kids, and buying houses. Now we're like, no, like they're still kids, right? So we're not helping them, we're hurting them, but there is a risk that you take by doing that. There is. And so now Adrian is 11 and he walks to school, and I'm very proud of him, and Gabriel sometimes does too. And it terrifies me because I know that something could happen. And I just pray to God, God, please take care of these kids. Like, I don't want to be the one who's wrong, and then, Susan's like, see, we shouldn't have done that all along. But I keep thinking to myself, if I raise them to be soft, they will be soft. If I raise them to be tough, they will be tough. If I raise them to be self-sufficient, they will be self-sufficient. And I don't think that I could be in the position that I'm in now if I didn't start that way from a young age. I'll give you like an extreme example. I know somebody who, growing up, their parents were very wealthy, and they bought them anything their heart desired. It was like their little prince. Buy him whatever he wants, whenever he wants, give him as much as he wants, and got fancy cars when he turned 16 that he didn't work for. He had credit card with his mom and dad's name on it with no limit, spend as much as they like. But then when they finally got a job when they got older, and I think their parents didn't have the money then, like something had happened and parents didn't have money anymore to fund their, their spoiled tendencies. They now are super, super, super depressed. Why? Because it feels like the best years are behind them. Like my best years are the years where mom and dad took care of everything and made me feel so special, blah, blah, blah. But now it's like, oh, I have a regular job where they pay me regular money? That's disgusting. I used to drive a Range Rover, right, when I was 16, and now I can't even afford that, right? Even though they have a great job, but they just can't afford that, right? So they feel like they're actually, it's like the person who was the prom queen or the person who was the star quarterback in high school, but afterwards, their whole life went downhill afterwards. And so then they feel like, oh, like my best years were in high school, I don't have anything to look forward to now, right? So by being tough on them, even if it scares you, and even if they could make mistakes, it's better to make a mistake at 12 years old than it is to make a mistake at 32 years old, right? Like right now, if I make a mistake, it could cost me my house, it could cost me my cars, it could cost me my marriage. Like mistakes now cost a lot. It's much better to let them make mistakes and fail at this age here. Yes, Gabriel, you've been raising your hand for a long time. This is very tough when you're audience, you have to answer to your own kids in the audience.
So it's basically like, what if, like, when you say like, oh, like even if they have like the thing, they'll learn like with the consequences, they'll learn like all the way in. What if they still do it and they think it's worth it and they keep doing it because they still think it's worth it?
I know, I'm suffering with that right now. He's saying, what if the kids are suffering the consequences and they're willing to take those consequences, right? I would just say, like, let's say if their teacher just gives them a grade that's an F for not doing their homework, and they don't care about the F that's on their homework, right? Like maybe that doesn't bother them. Then yes, you have to add additional things that they do care about to take away from them, right? So if the world is not doing enough, sometimes I tell Gabriel's teacher, I'm like, it's okay, you could be harder on him. You don't have to be so easy on him. Like, give it to him. And so I think she's a very sweet woman. So now I have to give additional consequences to get him to do whatever it is that needs to be done at school, because apparently whatever consequences at school are very mild. Yes, Adrian? All right. So, yeah. I'm sorry, what's your name? Mina. Hi, Mina. Yeah. Yeah. It's okay to be wrong. I'm just messing with you. I agree with you 100%. So what I do is I don't put too many rules. So I don't want to make something a rule unless I think it's like a mountain I'm going to die on, right? So I don't like to micromanage or to set unnecessary rules or too many rules. Then they're going to hate me because it's like they can't have a discussion with me, like you said, about anything. So most things are up for discussion, but if I have given it thought and I've talked to Susie about it, and we decide that half an hour is the limit to TV watching per day, right? We can't sit and have a debate about it. They can still talk to me about it, and I might in the future think on that, but that day there was a rule, so that day I have to already follow the rule that I set. Now, if they want to bring that up, I am not going to say to them, oh, I'm not having a discussion with you. We'll talk about it, and maybe I'll take that into consideration in the future. But I should not have even said 30 minutes is the limit if I wasn't going to enforce it. Because if I say 30 minutes is the limit, and then later I change my own rules, especially if I change my own rules because of their crying and whining, I've set up a bad precedent, which is, oh, crying and whining produces results. I should cry and whine more. So for me, if it comes from me, like let's say 30 minutes past, I'm like, I should give them a little more. That was kind of quick. I might say, hey, you got 10 more minutes. Since you were good, I'll give you 10 more minutes. But if the opposite happens, if 30 minutes is up, they hear the little alarm or they hear me telling them, hey, it's time to release whatever you're doing, and they're like, no, and they cry and they have a meltdown and they sprawl out on the floor. Now I know I can't give in, because then I would be giving them bad, what is it called? Bad reinforcement, right? So it just depends. Everything kind of depends on the situation you're in. But I don't like the idea of micromanaging kids or setting a rule for every tiny little thing. So what I do is like less rules, but meaningful rules. And ones that I feel like if I've made them, it's because me and my wife have talked about it and we both feel like this is really important and we can't bend on this rule. So that's it. It just means like when you do say something, stick by it. Don't be the kind of person that, like I had my cousin one time say to his daughter, something like, no ice cream today, right? And then she started crying. And he's like, nope, I told you, no ice cream today. And she just kept crying louder and harder. And then she wouldn't stop. And then like she was turning red in the face. And he loves his daughter, she's adorable. She's so cute. But now, he's now living a horrible life because now it's been like 10 minutes of her like crying about it. And then finally he says, you know what? Fine, just this one time. Fine, let's go get you ice cream. Who learned what in that scenario, right? Like, you're not the leader or the boss. You're an idiot now because now you're just teaching them very bad habits, right? And the problem is once it works, it's very hard to unlearn it because they know that somewhere deep inside, if I cry long enough, so maybe next time you say to yourself, you know what, I shouldn't have done that. I'm not going to do that again. Guess what? They'll cry for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes because they know that at some point you broke before. So I'm just going to keep going until I break you. So that's the problem, is like once some negative habit has been reinforced, then there's like a strong connection to it. So I'll give you some weird other example. So an example of they put these like mice in a pool and they were swimming until like point of exhaustion. They were going to die. Right before they died, they gave them a way out. And it was like after swimming for like hours that they were just going to like pass out and die. So then they gave them rest for a few days or whatever. Then they did it again, but they're like, we're going to try for 24 hours. And the mice lasted for 24 hours because there's hope that they'll get what they want, which is to be saved. In a negative way, your kids could do that, which is, last time mommy and daddy got me out of credit card debt, this time, even though they're saying no, they did last time. So maybe if I keep pushing and I keep prodding, eventually they will do it, or ice cream or whatever. So just pick your battles. Make sure it's just few battles. You don't want to fight with your kids every day about everything. And that if you have decided it's a really important thing to you, that's where you be the leader, boss person, that there's no more comments about it. Not about everything. I'm not running a military, and my dad was very tough like that, but I'm not taking that extreme of approach. So it's sort of, the problem is everybody has gone too far this way, and my dad was too far that way. I'm trying to find something in the middle that works. Yeah. If you're not sure about something, yeah, Mina, if you're not sure about something, have a discussion about them. But if it's something you're certain about is where I would say that applies. Susie, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to say that I really do encourage healthy discussion about things because I do believe that when a child feels like their voice is heard and maybe it can alter the course of what happens in the family, it gives them self-esteem, it gives them feeling like, oh, I'm a contributor, I'm a member of the family, and we definitely absolutely believe in that. I think George was talking more about like after you set a standard and then not letting them manipulate that standard afterwards. But I think that there's a lot of discussion beforehand.
That makes sense. And I think also just keeping in mind that I speak with myself as a parent that I mess it up sometimes. Sometimes I have like maybe not disrespectful, but really kind of have involved with my emotions, whatever, right? So sometimes I'm in the wrong. So having a chance to kind of hear my kid's perspective, my wife's perspective, make it a little bit more balanced. And I also think that it's really important for us as parents to hold it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to add that to. I think there's a way to do both where you know, you're a person in charge, you don't want to set any rules when it's cool, it's me. But there's also room for like, you can do both, where you also have some humility and others when you're not right, and also
As parents, I'll be the first to admit I make lots of mistakes, right? And I'm very probably bad parent in a lot of ways, but I'm also just trying my best, right? Like I think a lot of us want to be perfect, and that's good. I mean, that's nice to want to be perfect, but we all have our own deficiencies, and I think that's the problem. Is that I think by trying to not to be a good parent, we want to make sure we don't upset our children. But them being upset is normal. It's a normal part of life. Later on, you're going to have bosses that upset you. You're going to have coworkers that upset you. You're going to have things that don't go your way. It's a normal part of life. So if your parents upset you, it's okay. It's not a bad emotion to have. It's something that you're not always going to get along perfectly with everybody. So it's okay. I mean,
how do you persevere through that
yeah.
and make it something of growth instead of something that is just
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think I have any remark other than sometimes if it's not a discussionary thing, like it's not up for discussion, and the kid is so upset that it is not up for discussion, it's okay. There's a lot of, like, you know, when you get pulled over, when I get pulled over by the cops, it's not a time for me to have like a debate with him or to fight with him on it. You know, like sometimes you just have to take your licks and just, okay, this person's in a point of authority over me. I just got to shut up and take it, right?
Yeah, but
It's okay.
just to add to that, you do validate the emotion and then that. So it's like, this is non-negotiable, you're really disappointed, you allow them to feel disappointed and say like, I know that's really disappointing to you, and it's allow them to feel that, not like, you're not allowed to feel that response to this action. They're allowed to, and yeah.
Yeah. What did you want to say, Gabriel?
I'm gonna say a little bit before this. Why do you gotta be a friend when they're like 18 or 16?
Because he's asking a good question. He said, why at a certain age, like in their teens, like 16 or 18? So you're becoming like their friend / mentor. So you're there to give advice. You're there to give a shoulder to cry on, right? You're there to listen to them and to hear them out, but you're not there to correct everything, because at that age, they're almost adults. Like, they need to learn how to lead their own life. So I could be your friend, but I can no longer boss you around or tell you what you do and you can't do, because if you leave and go to college, I don't even know what you're doing. How am I supposed to be like bossing you around when you're in college? That's not nice. You're growing up. You need to have some freedom.
Like, why can't you have like a regular friend like you have in school?
You can.
Like when you're younger, like even if you're like 10 or 11.
Yes. Well, Adrian is my friend and you are my friend, right? But I also have a responsibility to correct you if you do something wrong. But at the same time, we can still be friends. All right, let's wrap it up because it's been an hour, so I'm sorry I took so much of your time, guys. Thank you for coming. You want to pray together? All right, let's just do a quick prayer. Thank you, God, so much for bringing us together. Thank you, God, for giving us the ability to have these wonderful children. Please give us the wisdom to guide them towards you and towards a life where they're able to take care of themselves and the next generation. Thank you for everything, God.